Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this QlickiT Enhancing Theatre Utilisation webinar with Leeds Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust. It's great to see so many people connecting at the moment. I can still see people joining as I'm talking. Hopefully you'll find it as enjoyable and useful as we think you will. It should be a relatively painless afternoon for you. Let's get started. So, webinar presenters today, we've got the main event, which is Suzanne Abrahams, who's the General Manager of Theatres Anaesthesia at Leeds Teaching Hospitals, and myself, excuse me, and myself, Barney Elliott, QlickiT Sector Business Manager. Just some general housekeeping for the event while we're waiting for people to join as well. My colleague will be muting people, so when you connect it, don't sort of be surprised if you then get muted, because having background noise can detract often from the presentation that we're actually doing. If we could ask that people don't unmute themselves, as I said, it can cause interference with the actual presentation. We will be having questions at the end of the webinar. To facilitate those questions, we're actually going to use the chat facility of this GoToMeeting. Chat facility on the right hand side of your screen, you should have sort of a menu bar with icons vertically up the side. One of those icons looks like a speech bubble. If you click on the speech bubble, you should then be able to type in a message, send it to the organiser. That then comes through and we'll be able to field those questions at the end of the webinar. If we've got lots and lots of questions, we may not be able to get through them all. We'll do our best, but if not, then we'll try and respond outside of the webinar as well. The webinar is being recorded as well, so we'll be able to sort of send people links to that afterwards as well. Right, a bit of an introduction to QlickiT. We are data visualization experts specializing in the QlickiT portfolio. QlickiT is a company providing an array of products which provide data visualization incredibly powerful. We've got a substantial client base with over 130 customers, and we deal with all sizes of companies as well. So that's single users to large companies with over 10,000 users. We cater for everybody. We do have experience across many industries, a range of applications as well, spanning every imaginable business intelligence requirement that you could possibly have. It's a really powerful tool, and we can kind of embed it across everything that you probably need it to do. Right-hand side of your screen there, you've got some examples of our private sector links and companies that we work with currently. I'm not going to dwell on those because more importantly for people on this webinar are people in the public sector. So here's a list of some of the people we have as our customers across the public sector, a few in local government there at the bottom too. You notice top right hand corner there are actually over 200 NHS organisations that actually do use QlickiT, so it's not something which is new, it's very well embedded across the NHS and the public sector. Vast list of names there. I'm not going to dwell on those because I want to get through our slides so we can get to the main event of the Leeds Teaching Hospitals webinar. So the relationship that we've had with Leeds Teaching Hospitals, we've worked with them for the last 5 years. Initially we provided some initial trainings, we trained up a small team of people within the trust and provided some consultancy since then as well to kind of support app development and so on. And then more recently, over the last year, we've supported Suzanne and the theatre team in sort of developing the system as well. We actually, though, based on our training of the local QlickiT team, we've actually been relatively hands-off because their team are quite skilled in QlickiT development and they've been able to actually take things forward themselves and do a lot of development in-house. So we're kind of there as a support mechanism rather than hands-on. TheatrePro, it is an out-of-the-box solution, so we have an app that we can provide to people, but we fully appreciate that no trusts are the same. So in terms of systems, data, processes, you're all different, okay? So you all do it in different ways. So although it's an out-of-the-box app, we appreciate that you will need to develop and tweak it, and we can do the hands-on work with that. We can develop the app to base it around your local needs, requirements, data models, and so on. Or, as we've seen with Leeds, we can train local teams and they can actually then take that development further forward as well. So basically we can tailor that app and it really ticks all the boxes that you then need. Okay? Right, enough of me talking about us. Let's move on to the main event and I'll hand you over to Suzanne.
Okay, so hello and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on how we at Leeds Teaching Hospitals have enhanced our theatre utilisation through the support of our theatre information system, and that's called TheatrePro. My name is Suzanne Abrahams and I'm the General Manager for Theatres Anaesthesia at Leeds, and I've been involved with the introduction and development of TheatrePro in Leeds since we started using it in early 2015. I'll just run through the items I'll be covering within the next 20 minutes. These include how we have used TheatrePro to do a variety of things, to include enhance clinical engagement, reduce late starts, reduce the number of cancelled sessions that we have, improve overall communication and understanding of unresolved issues with the clinical surgical support units, improve data quality and accuracy, enhance our business and activity planning process, and also help formulate our cost improvement plans. And I'm also going to talk a bit about how TheatrePro has completely changed how we manage our business on a day-to-day basis. Before we introduced TheatrePro within our organisation, obtaining information in relation to our theatres was extremely difficult and time-consuming. Any data that could be produced was difficult to read, interpret and share. Data quality was also a huge problem in that because the data was so difficult to obtain, it was not done so on a regular basis and therefore it was often not validated. Subsequently, a lot of the information produced was inaccurate and as such no solid planning or change could be made on the basis of this data. TheatrePro completely changed all of this. It's a self-service tool, which means that it's incredibly easy to use, navigate, and produces information in a clear, well-presented way. Information is instantly accessible and as such can be produced on a daily, weekly or monthly basis and shared very, very easily. This means that the information is constantly being validated. The fact that we now have a clear, readily accessible, accurate data has made the world of difference to the way we do our business. When we first were introduced to TheatrePro, we were blown away with the potential of the system and the kind of information it could produce. And to be perfectly honest, this was quite overwhelming, as it felt at the start difficult to see the wood from the trees because it could do so much. That's where our informatics team in Leeds has come in. The informatics team at Leeds spent weeks working with me to see the kind of information that we as a business team would find useful. Previously, I was also the general manager of a surgical clinical service unit, and so I had a good idea of what the surgical CSU management teams would want to see as well. Once this was clear, the informatics team adapted TheatrePro to our own needs and specification. This made the system seem much less daunting, and as someone who is not very good with technology and has very limited experience of dealing with bespoke information systems, I immediately felt comfortable with the module, the navigation and the way in which the data was presented. After using it for a few weeks and with close interaction with the informatics team who made the changes we requested, we were really excited about the potential of TheatrePro and wanted to share it with the rest of the trust. Myself and my team presented the system to general managers, business managers, schedulers, heads of nursing, matrons, consultants, clinical directors and the executive team, basically anybody who would listen. Overwhelmingly, the response has been positive, with the clinical service units describing the introduction of TheatrePro as a game changer. We gave all of our consultants instant access. We have had the inevitable questions raised regarding the accuracy of the data, but as we always say, it may very well be that the data isn't accurate, but that's why we need you to check it and let us know so we can correct it. We continue to work very closely with informatics, who are amazingly supportive and will add or amend anything we need them to do in order for the system to meet our service user needs. So what does it look like? Unfortunately, I'm unable to demonstrate the system live, but I've produced some screenshots to give you the idea of how it looks and the kind of information TheatrePro can produce. So this is the contents page, which is the first screen that you come to when TheatrePro is opened. As you can see, there are lots of subsections that you can access depending on what you want to look at. You can also look at very high level to the most detailed. So for example, if you wanted to look at the number of cancelled theatre sessions over the last 12 months across the whole trust, you could view this at that very high level. And similarly, if you wanted to look at the number of cancelled sessions that have happened with less than 2 weeks' notice over the last 12 months, compared by theatre suite, specialty or surgeon, you can do that too. It really can drill down to the minutiae of anything you want to look at. The main reports I tend to use are rankings, starts and finishes, trends, dashboards, and the summary report. And it's the summary report that I'll show you now. This is the summary report, and when I'm training people to use this, I always advise them to start at the top and then work down the left-hand side. So initially, you select the time period you want to look at. This can be any of these tabs at the top, or you can select a custom date. You can also select specific sessions. For example, if you just wanted to look at Monday morning sessions of the last 12 months, you're able to do that. You select what type of session you want to look at, acute or elective, and for us we're split across 4 different sites, so select the site you want to look at, or sites. You can select more than one at once. You then select how you want to show the data, and you have the ability to split it by theatre suite, surgeon, anaesthetist, or specialty. The report is then produced, and as you can see, this shows you the results of the KPIs for whoever or whatever you have selected over the time period you've chosen. I always advise people to use this report as a signpost for what you want to look at in more detail, and then select the corresponding report. For example, if late one, select the late starts report, which will show you which lists are running late, the reasons, and how much time you are losing due to late starts. You can also compare different specialties or consultants, and that just directs your focus to where it needs to be, really. It was introducing the information that was generated by TheatrePro that highlighted just how much operating time we were losing at Leeds due to late starts. On the back of this information, we introduced a project called First Start, which meant that the first patient is always sent for independent if a bed is confirmed. This has reduced our late starts by 170 hours compared to the same time period last year. It is also important to bear in mind we have much more acute bed pressures now as well, so that hasn't helped the situation. In addition, as it's now known, this information is being looked at regularly, and the consultants are much more interested in how the reasons for late starts are being recorded. So much so that this has now been an agreed part of the team brief, so the reason for the late start is agreed at team brief, and that inevitably is improved data quality. When looking at reducing avoidable cancellations, and on the basis of the information available to us, we introduced a weekly meeting to support the 642 process within Leeds Teaching Hospitals. This process is simple. It is at 6 weeks the theatre lists are published, at 4 weeks the surgical specialties lock them down to confirm they're using them, and at 2 weeks we confirm the anaesthetist. TheatrePro enables us to produce a report which illustrates who have not locked the list down. These can then be reallocated or stood down in a timely manner and reduce short notice cancellations. It is this user-friendly, clear data that we're able to produce with TheatrePro that enables us to share the information across the trust to highlight specific issues. And that's exactly what we did when referring to short notice cancellations. This raises the awareness of how at times one of the Trust's most valuable resources, i.e. theatre time, is being wasted as people fail to cancel lists in a timely fashion. Again, by making certain selections, you can produce the data comparing specialties, theatre suites and consultants, so you know where or who to focus on with your service improvement work. This is an expression report and how you can extract data. You have the ability to look at any time period you like, comparing months, surgeon specialties or theatre suites. The reasons for the cancellations are listed with a breakdown in more detail at the bottom. We have predetermined avoidable and unavoidable reasons for cancellations built within our system, so we're able to filter by these, and also we're able to select 2 or 4 weeks and only see cancellations which have occurred with less than that period of notice. TheatrePro has really shined a light on one of the biggest avoidable problems that we experience on a daily basis. I personally believe that communication between the theatres and the clinical service units is absolutely crucial in order to keep a collaborative and productive relationship between the service provision unit and the support CSUs. It is very easy to get into an us and them kind of mentality when looking at inefficiencies in theatres, but TheatrePro has enabled us to be completely transparent in terms of what happens on a day-to-day basis and validate the data as we go along. As I previously said, the CSUs all have access and use TheatrePro on a daily basis, and we produce regular reports such as cancelled ops. We also produce the productive operating theatres information, which we update weekly across all the 57 theatres, and we produce a bespoke pack for the theatre board on a monthly basis. We're also just about to roll out an add-on to TheatrePro, M-printing, and this will send each surgeon a simple one-page summary the day after their theatre list, providing them with the salient points relating to their list, and if there is anything that's obviously been misrecorded, then they'll let us know, and then that can be corrected. I've touched on this throughout the presentation, but having accurate data is absolutely key to making the data produced mean something and be of value. As I've said previously, we use TheatrePro in such a way the theatre teams validate information on a weekly and monthly basis. We're also very aware that a lot of things that happen in theatres are recorded in the theatre register, but not always recorded on the theatre management system. This is particularly applicable to the completion of timeouts, team brief and debrief. Almost 100% of the time, these are recorded completed in the theatre register and then not recorded on TMS, particularly the debriefs. We've started to share this information on a weekly basis for validation, so we produce it from TheatrePro and then send it out to the team leaders to validate. And as a result of doing that, the completion figures have improved dramatically. And as this is where we pull our information from that we submit to the CQC, it's absolutely vital that it's accurate. Through M-printing, the consultants will be starting to validate their own information, as I'm sure the second they see something that's on that report that didn't happen in the theatre session, they will be letting us know in order for it to be corrected. There's also been times where we've shared data that's not been very popular, and that's particularly the case when you're comparing consultants' theatres efficiencies against other consultants in the same specialty. However, I personally have always welcomed this as it generates discussion and gets people to look at the data, and only by looking at the data is the way it will become accurate and therefore meaningful. As I've demonstrated throughout this presentation, TheatrePro really does shine a light on the areas of inefficiency and where further information could be sought and focus given. For example, high cancellation rates, low utilisation rates, or high number of late starts or early finishes. As part of the business planning, we use TheatrePro to put challenge back to CSUs who are asking for additional theatre capacity. We look at usage of existing capacity, how well the youth sessions are utilised, and the number of patient and sessional cancellations. This information really does help put a level of robust challenge back to make sure resources are distributed in the right way, and it's not just constantly going asking for additional theatres, because that's not always the right answer. Areas of inefficiencies are also highlighted, and service improvement pieces of work can be built up around this kind of information. For example, if a list starts on time and finishes on time, you don't have to pay overtime. Therefore, looking at lists through TheatrePro which start late and finish late can be the start of formulating a CIP. Having said that, looking at lists that start late and finish early with no patient cancellations could suggest more patients should be added and could be a basis of an income generation scheme. The point is, this data is readily available. The next couple of slides are example controversial information I've mentioned earlier that is available through TheatrePro. The rankings report allows you to compare performance against the key performance indicators between theatres, surgeons, specialties, months of the year, days of the year by year. You can compare anything you like, really. The report speaks for itself here, but as you can imagine, consultant names in there, conversations can become quite challenging. But as I said before, it means people are looking and talking about the data, which is what we want them to do. The final shots I'll show you are those of the trend report. Depending on your selection, be it a particular consultant, theatre suite or specialty, it will give you the trend information against each KPI for whatever period you have selected. This is particularly useful to see if a particular action or change has the desired outcome. For example, if you were doing some service improvement work to reduce late starts, this would show that they had indeed reduced from the point the change occurred, so you'd be able to demonstrate that quite easily through using the trend report. Okay, so I hope you can see from what I presented today what a monumental impact the introduction of TheatrePro has had in the way we manage our theatres. As it says on the slides, as I've said during the past 20 minutes, what TheatrePro enables us to do is that we can provide any form of theatre information split in any way requested. We can easily compare theatre suite specialties, surgeon or anaesthetist data. Surgical specialties can use this as a self-service tool, and they do that, and we're really receptive to that. We can make quick informed decisions based on the data that's instantly available, and we're also able to look prospectively to enable scheduling and activity planning. To be perfectly honest, it just makes things clearer and a bit easier. So what next? Well, as I mentioned, we are just on the verge of rolling out M-printing across the Trust, giving consultants a simple report detailing key information relating to the use of their theatre session, and that report will be emailed to them the day after it happens. We're also working on a project whereby consultants will record in Theatre Management System what they completed in theatre, and it's anticipated that will have a positive impact on terms of income and accuracy of information. We are currently developing a scheduling tool which will provide a median time for each procedure by consultant and anaesthetist, which is based on what actually happened in the previous 12 months. This will hopefully enable us to schedule lists more accurately and ensure they are nice and full. Underpinning all of this is TheatrePro, which we continue to develop on a daily basis with our wonderful informatics team, who are the ones who really make it work for us. So in summary, TheatrePro enables us to produce clear and concise information in a really easy and transparent way. This opens up the scope of what we can look at and how we manage our business on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so now it's your opportunity to ask me any questions that you might have.
Okay, guys, so as discussed earlier on, we're not going to have sort of audio questions just because we'd have everybody talking at once. There's quite a lot of people connected to the session. Excuse me, as we've been talking, there have been sort of a few chat messages coming through, so we'll do our best to sort of raise as many of those as we can and provide some answers as well. So I'll start off with some of the questions. So here we've got a question: does the TheatrePro accumulate individual operating times per specific case?
What it does is it will look at, so if you're looking at a consultant, Mr. Smith, and you chose to look over the past 24 months, it will record for you every single procedure that Mr. Smith has done and the length of time it took him to do that, and it will create a median for you, a median time for you, and it will also do that with the anaesthetist that Mr. Smith works with. So that becomes particularly useful if you have a consultant who says it will take me 2 hours to do this procedure if I work with this anaesthetist, but if I work with another anaesthetist it will take me 4 hours. TheatrePro will give you the average amount of time it takes to do that procedure with Mr. Smith when he's working with anaesthetist A or when he's working with anaesthetist B, so you really can tailor your theatre lists around that information depending on who the anaesthetist is and what the procedure is.
Okay, another question here. What theatre management system do you use?
Galaxy.
Galaxy. Okay, and are there others? There must be a few out there.
I'm sure there are out there, but
well, one of the great things about Click products is it doesn't matter what your data source is, it will sit on top of it and put it in the same way. So you can have a core template or core application which can actually just point at your different systems and pull that data in different ways, and you kind of tailor it around those. So it can actually sit on top of any theatre management system at all. It's very powerful in that respect. Do you use OPCS codes to do this?
At the moment, the OPCS codes are not put directly into our theatre management system, but the project that we're working on at the moment is looking at that. It's exactly what we will do. So at the minute, the theatre scheduling tool that I alluded to earlier uses the free text that is put into the theatre management system, and that the inefficiencies with that is that if you have one procedure that's spelled 10 different ways, then you'll get 10 different, which appears 10 different selections that you could possibly make. Obviously with the OPCS codes that will completely change that and make it a lot more user friendly. So that's why we haven't rolled out the theatre scheduling tool across the Trust yet until we get to that point. So we will, that's exactly what we aim to do, is start to use the OPCS codes in the coming couple of months.
Okay. Has TheatrePro had any quantifiable effects on productivity?
It has. So initially we went into when we introduced TheatrePro and started to develop it, then felt in a confident position then to be able to initiate the productive operating theatre project within Leeds, because we had a very, very strong basis of information to be able to monitor any change or improvement. And when we went into that, we expected theatre utilisation would be the main thing that would improve. However, as we started this programme of work, unfortunately, we had the largest bed pressures we've ever had at Leeds hit us, and they've not really gone away. And also the way in which theatre utilisation is measured nationally, which is how we measure it, isn't really a true reflection of how that theatre is used. But the things that we can measure and the things that we have seen improve over the time that we've been using TheatrePro and introducing the productive operating theatre is that we've done over 600 more cases when you compare at the same time period to the previous one. We've had hundreds of less DNAs. We've made improvements in late starts, early finishes and late finishes. We've had over 400 less people cancelled on the day due to clinical cancellations. And one of the things which I don't think we set out to measure at the time, but again we could do using TheatrePro, was 123 patients less have been cancelled due to a lack of surgical time. And for me that really does show a definite and a quantifiable improvement, the fact that we're not running out of time. It suggests to me that we're using the sessions better and we're using them more efficiently, which is just what we want. We want to start on time, finish on time and be busy all in between, and that's what's happening.
I've got another question here linked to cancellations, which is asking what are the predetermined avoidable reasons for cancellations? Okay,
so this is quite a long list and I've not got it to hand. And we developed this list as well with the surgical CSUs because we wanted to be clear that we all agreed what was avoidable and what was unavoidable. So things like surgeon sick is unavoidable, and the breakdown of theatre equipment is unavoidable. However, surgeon on leave is avoidable. Theatre staff unavailable due to being on leave is avoidable. So it's those kind of things that fall into those categories. Anything that we could have planned to do better tends to be in the avoidable category, and the things that just happen on the day that are just because life is life are in the unavoidable category.
It might be one, as you said, it's quite a long list. It might be one of these questions which might be better if whoever raised that question maybe contacted. The contact details are on the screen there. If you got in touch with us, it might be that we could put you in touch with Suzanne. You can maybe discuss that
absolutely
outside of this session, which might be a better way of actually taking that forward.
Yeah.
Another question here, which is a general one about TheatrePro. Is this an external system or one that Leeds has developed? I can probably start off on that one. TheatrePro is an app that QlickiT developed. As I said, we are a Click partner and we provide sort of solutions with the Click product line. So essentially Click and it gives you sort of a tool that you can develop business intelligence applications, and you can start to visualize your data in a really smart, fast and intelligent way. We've created an app in that to sort of that we can then provide to trusts and so on, TheatrePro, which then gives you a starting point. Hopefully it ticks a lot of the boxes for you as a starter for 10. But you can tweak it, and obviously we will work with people very closely to kind of tweak it and enhance it and change it to fit in with your data models and systems and so on. Leeds, because we'd already been working with Leeds Teaching Hospitals with Click prior to TheatrePro, we trained them, so they had their own little team of Click developers already. So we kind of helped them with loading, linking to data sources and so on for TheatrePro. They actually have taken that development forward themselves. So it's something that you can develop yourselves, or it's an app that you can sort of buy out of the box from us at QlickiT and kind of slot onto your data. We can provide hands-on support and consultancy to make it work, to tweak it, and then to change it to fit in your local systems. Or indeed, you can do things in-house. Click itself, you can buy Click products and actually develop applications yourself from start to finish in-house. You don't need to take an app, but obviously this, from a theatre point of view, this gives you a good starting point. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Suzanne.
No, just to say, as I mentioned in the presentation, that's exactly what we did when I first was introduced to TheatrePro. As I say, I found it quite overwhelming because literally there is so much information in there. And our informatics team did almost kind of strip it down to simplify it for me. And then we built it back up so it did and looked the way we needed it to. And it's just worked really, really well.
Okay, marvellous. Right, where next? Can you provide patient-level costings?
No, PLIC's information doesn't come through TheatrePro. We do that at Leeds through the PLIC's system, which is a different module. So the patient-level costings don't go through there. What we do use TheatrePro for is for a bit of a rough and ready calculation of our theatre costings, so we know, the average cost of a theatre session, we know what it costs us when there's a short notice cancellation, or if a theatre overruns, we know what that's going to cost us, or if a theatre starts late, we know what that's going to cost us. So we have built a report in TheatrePro which at a click of whatever button you press will tell you, depending on whatever you're looking at. So for example, over the past 2 weeks in urology, it has cost us X amount due to late short notice cancellations, or due to late starts, or due to overruns. So that's really quite powerful information when you're doing your business planning, and also helps to strengthen your challenge back to the CSUs when they are asking for additional theatre resource, when you can clearly see what they're doing with the resource they currently have isn't perhaps what you would want them to be doing.
Okay, marvellous. We've come up at the 2:30 mark. I'm just going to drop in one more question. But appreciate it is 2:30. But the question here, you've talked about first start. Can you give an overview of your approach on this again? You mentioned you called for first patient regardless of beds.
Yeah, so we spent many months looking at this, and again it was directed by TheatrePro because that was telling us of the hundreds and hundreds of hours we were losing in operating time due to the fact that a lot of our lists were starting late. And the main reason for them starting late, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons for them starting late was due to there was no confirmation of a bed. So when we looked into it, and we worked again with informatics using TheatrePro, we looked at how many of these patients, the first patient on every list, actually didn't get done because there was no bed. And the number was insignificant. It was tiny number. So with this kind of information to back up what we were thinking, we then worked with our medical director of operations and our clinical director, and worked with other CSUs to get their opinion on how they felt just starting with the first patient, knowing what we knew, that they would inevitably have a bed available to get the list started on time. And there was a lot of discussion, a lot of challenge back to us. But again, the information was telling us what it told us, that in the vast majority of times, the patient would always get a bed, and that's what history has told us. And in the tiny amount of time, that wasn't the case. The worst thing that would happen is the patient would be sent for and then just sent back to the ward. We don't proceed. It's not that you proceed with the anaesthesia, it's that you send for the patient and get them into the anaesthetic room. So that's what we've done. And as you can see, it has worked. It has worked very well. But again, with operational pressures and the bed pressures that everybody's experiencing at the minute, that doesn't help matters at all. And at times, when you don't know if you're actually going to go ahead with your first case because you might be cancelling cancers, it's a difficult one. But the principle and the theory behind it is as I've just described, and the figures show us that we are getting more and more sessions started on time, with the theory being that if you start on time, that sets the tone for the rest of your theatre list, and things just happen when they should happen. If you start on time, it sets you up for the day, and everybody was bought into that, including the theatre staff.
Marvellous, thanks Suzanne. Right, there's a couple of questions, but we've sort of run out of time unfortunately for today. But we will send out sort of summary emails covering sort of all questions and maybe some of the questions that we've not answered as part of the webinar. I mean, you've got contact details on the screen, so please do feel free to get in touch, and we can sort of pass you on to Suzanne if you want to speak to her direct, or if you want some more information about TheatrePro and obviously the Click products that we do at QlickiT. More than happy to talk to people, so please do get in touch with us if you want to know more information. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope it's been useful for you guys out there, and we look forward to speaking to you in the future. Thanks very much.